commiserate some things from 2018 too, but in any event, remember some of what we've experienced God doing among us then. And also look forward to 2019 and looking forward to see, what do we expect? What do we hope for? What do we long to see God doing among us in the year ahead? So, with that in mind, let me lead us in prayer. Gracious God, we think of the hymn that talks about you, O God, being our help in ages past and our hope for years to come. And Lord, that includes you being our help in this year past. And we thank you for the ways in which you have been that. And we pray for grace to remember well what you've done among us in the past year, but also, Lord, the humility to admit where we've not been in step with you and need to be. And also, Lord, in the year to come, your word says that many are the plans of a man's heart, but it's your will that prevails, and that's great because that's really what we want anyway. So, Lord, we don't just want to be talking about our plans. We want to be vectoring into what it is that you're calling us to be about. And we know, God, that what you're calling us to be about is to be disciples and to help others become disciples. And so we pray that you would give us wisdom, that you give us energy, that you give us a passion for that, so that we might be fruitful as well as faithful in your kingdom. We ask it in Jesus' name and for his sake. Amen. Well, one of the ways that it's easy to think about a year past is to think in terms of changes, things that are different. And certainly we've seen changes happen in this past year. Changes, programmatic changes, changes in kind of ways that we're trying to structure ourselves to make decisions. But I guess whenever I think of that, to my thinking, the most significant change is change in terms of people, because our mission to be making disciples involves people, right? And so I often think about a year in terms of who are people that we met this year, who are people we said goodbye to this year, who are some people that made significant steps in terms of their faith this year. And so what I want to just begin with is just a couple of slides with just some names of people on them to see as we go through here that are people that have just kind of made some transitions this year. Beginning with people who joined the church triumphant. And here too, with these, I don't just want to, you can't just read those. Can somebody say each name and say it slowly so we can pause there? Van, would you be willing to do that? Just kind of read each name here. You can do it so we can all collectively read here. These are folks, again, who blessed their congregation for a long time and no longer walk the earth with us, but they're with the Lord. We're grateful for that, but we miss them. Van?
Nancy Uri, Ruth Vincent, Beverly Weimer, Kay Fennell, John Barnes, Laura Stillway, Shirley Corn, Kathleen Lewis, Dottie Wilson, Chuck McClure, Jenna Andrew, Melissa McCoy, Glenna Smith, Doris Webster.
And Dan, thank you. And we do just thank the Lord for the way He has used each of these folks in touch and rich and bless us. Again, part of how we are disciples is how we come alongside people who are grieving and people who are trust and dying. But also it's celebrated when new folks have babies born. You babies born this year. Michael family have one there. Michael's, Clem's, written hours, Glass Scouts. Baptisms. And with those only two babies. ladies, 2 little girls were baptized in the creek. And Rachel comes and she was going to be baptized in the creek, but it was a horrendous day. And so we got a little wader pool out here. And that's where she was baptized. So new covenant partners this year. Some folks who went through the process to do that, to join us. 3 of them, or 2 of them, are confirmation students, and the rest are post-high school adults. And also, something this year, sometimes, if I were to say this, there'd be no names here. But this year, in terms of staff, new staff people, a bunch of folks. Corey, who came on actually toward the end of 2017 as our media communications person, but then in the beginning of this year, added the administrative secretary responsibility, Luke Fugate. Jacqueline Major, Reverend Eric here, came to us. Kim joined us as a part-time custodian. Bonnie is tech director, and Dee Dee is director of operations. And one of the things, hi Dee Dee, Dee Dee's here. And Dee Dee joined us in November as director of operations, and something that we announced in written-wise, both in the bulletin today and in the email that went home, is just this month, Dee Dee's also begun serving as our bookkeeper and financial controller. And that comes because kind of as a mutual decision between us and the accounting firm that was doing that to not be continuing with that relationship, but to go back to having an in-house bookkeeper. And so Dee Dee is going to be assuming that role, which is actually is going to be pretty seamless for you because Dee Dee actually worked for the accounting firm for the first 3 months of the year and was the person that they sent here. So she's very familiar with the work, and she's here as well. So Dee Dee, we're glad to have you doing that role as well.
Pastor?
Yes?
Does that mean she's going to be taking care of writing the checks?
You taking care of writing the checks, Dee Dee?
Yes, I will be.
Yes, you will be. There you go. Yep. So again, some just names of transitions of some folks this year. Some of you, I know you're not really into names. You're into numbers, right? I'll give you a few numbers later. I'll give you some numbers as far as like worship goes and numbers as far as professions of faith go. But let me give you some money numbers here. Financials here are operating budget. You can see in our giving, we did not make our operating budget with our giving, but we did beat our overall expenses, which were lower for a couple of reasons. Some of them most involving personnel and some property things that weren't as expensive as we thought they would be. But again, the exceeded expenses didn't meet the budget. There's that. And then also with respect to mission, I know we're always interested in that too. The budget of that 748, 115 was budgeted for mission, and then we had special appeals as well. And you can see from the special appeals the totals there. And again, it does not include the World Vision 30-hour famine giving, which some is from our church and some is not. A lot of it's not. And nor does it include other money that is outside the congregation going to our denomination, which is about $7,500 a year to give there.
Pastor?
Yes?
I have to confess that with this transition as your mission chair this past year, I was concerned about steps.
Mm-hmm.
Because the way we met our lower budget was to cut steps and cut unforeseen. God laughed. Not only, so I was thinking steps was going to run the danger of running dry, maybe 6 years down the road. Not only is it not running dry, but this January we had $1,000 more in the steps fund than we did January of last year. So when it came to steps, God is good.
Yes.
Well, he's got good all the time, but it was just, that was like a personal telegram to me. You worried, and I did better than you expected. So missions, even though it's funded different, missions is still the same. And you still have the same active missions committee, and we're still having fun.
And for the uninitiated, STEPS stands for Short-Term Experience Investigation.
It's for short-term mission trips.
Mission trips, yes.
That's what I'm
It's how from our church, again, people going on the trips also contribute to them, but it's how how our church itself wants to
Like
help
on the youth group
on mission
trips, the
yeah.
kids get 2/3 of their money. If an adult is going on a mission trip, like Larry Fleming's going this spring, as is Tim Mack, they will get 1/3 of their money.
Okay, I make a motion we don't support Fleming and we support McDouble. I'm sorry, never mind.
But all those widows,
Didn't have a second, never mind.
all those widows in Ukraine, that we disappointed about.
That's right, all the widows in Ukraine there. Oh my. But yeah, this is just some of, it's just some little facts and figures there. Probably a way that's more fun to look at the year, and Corey, you're going to have to lift up here for this, is to look at it through events. And Corey Brown is our media communication person extraordinaire. And Corey has created a video just through some of the events of the year that's, I think it's about 4 minutes long. And again, it's another way just to kind of show some of what the Lord did through us. Oh, look at who's coming. Hi, Larry. We were just talking about
My picture on there.
But sit back and take a look at the video that shows some of what happened in the year past.
Every day we go to war again. We assume we know so much more than them before we hear what they have to say. Headline breaks and we start to hate again, calling them names again. We give our peace away. I hope they see it, 'cause I wanna see it. I hope we believe it. I wanna see the love all around you, all around you. I wanna know that love is all around you. It's all around. Day by day, hope fades away, and then we know that there is pain within. We cannot medicate. Learn to feel, learn to begin again. Open our eyes again to see our brother's pain. I hope they see it, 'cause I wanna see it. I hope we believe it. I wanna see the love all around. wanna see the love all around you, all around you. I wanna know that love is all around you. It's all around.
Some of the significant things that you think that happened among us in the year past. And you know, I preface this by saying I think often in terms of changes, but maybe for some it's not changes. It's God giving you the grace to persevere in things that have been going on for a while. Maybe it's you lived another year with cancer, you know, or you stayed married for yet another year, you know, or you know, it could be something like that as well. Or if there's something that you have. But take a couple minutes just around your tables, just some highlights that you've seen. Well, something that happened in 2019, this last week, is three of our folks, Pastors Eric and Melissa and Communication Specialist Extraordinaire Corey, got to go to our eco-denominations national gathering, and I do believe that some of what they got to see and experience and learn is going to be bear some fruit among us in 2019. I'm not sure at this point they haven't had a chance to process all of that, but let's share a little bit just of some of what you saw, what happened in Colorado Springs last week with you guys.
Well, one of the things that I can encourage you with is that the eco denomination itself, you can rest assured that you're a part of something larger than yourself, something larger than just East Maine. And it's a very Christ-centered, grace-driven leadership there with Dana Allen and with all the people that surround him. I mean, these guys are serious about seeing the local church thrive, and they're serious about seeing disciples and people come to Christ in that local church. So that is their mission, is to help us to thrive. Just one highlight I wanted to bring up when I was there, Rich Stearns, who I think he was the president. He's not anymore, but I think that was his last role as president at World Vision. He had brought some statistics, which I had no idea, but he brought some statistics about poverty, world poverty since 1990. And here's just a few of the bullet points that he put up on the board, which actually blew me away. His statement was that world poverty is on the decline. I mean, rapidly. And so here's just some bullet points just to encourage us. Population living on $1.90 a day has been reduced by more than 1 billion people since 1990. Maternal mortality reduced almost by half around the world since 1990. Hunger has dropped by 40% around the world since 1990. 76% improvement in access to clean water around the world since 1990. And then under 5 child mortality has fallen from 35,000 preventable deaths per day to less than 15,000. So just to remind us that when we're giving and we're giving to organizations like World Vision and we're partnering with ministries like that, that we are the hands and feet of Jesus, that we're actually making an impact around the world. And we can see that in the data today. So that was encouraging for me. The Eagle Conference was really awesome. Albert Tate had a great message on racial reconciliation. There was, what was the lady from Gordon? Nicole Martin had a great presentation on transformational leadership, which really impacted me. And like Bill said, we're still processing a lot. And also, we have the pleasure of being able to go see God's creation at Pikes Peak, which was, for me at least, I know for Melissa and Corey also, but it was a spiritual experience. I mean, just to be up on Pikes Peak and to see the mountains and just to really see face to face how big God is and how small you really are, it's always a good reflection to have. So yeah, it was great. We had a great time, pumped, came back spiritually pumped, and yeah, I thought it was great.
Yeah, on behalf of all of us too, just thanks again for your investment in leadership to send us to this conference. As many of you know, I'm in the process of starting my ordination process in ECO. And from that perspective, I was so encouraged by this conference. The biblical foundation for what they are about, their commitment to theological orthodoxy and integrity, but in a very life-giving way. That sounds like it could be very dry, but that being the thing that really is at the foundation of what they are about. A lot of the sessions that we went to, kind of the theme was also about how as leaders we cultivate greater clarity, not just as they shared with us stuff that at the denominational level they're doing to kind of become clear in what they are about. And they also gave us tools on how local churches can improve our sense of clarity about our mission and our vision, and how we go about doing that. So that was really interesting to see. It was also really encouraging to see a church that is committed. As Eric mentioned, having Albert Tate come and talk. While the conference was predominantly white men and women, that there is a real desire to see diversity, not just for diversity's sake, but because we are more complete when we represent the full body of Christ. And that was a really encouraging message. It was very honest, and I was really grateful for what he had to share on that. And also just the fact that women have a place at the table, not as an afterthought, not as an exception, not as a how do we increase diversity, but because they're really given and recognized in this denomination as people with gifts and graces for leadership in the church. So that to me was particularly encouraging. Just to pick up a little bit on what Eric said about Rich Stearns, one of the things he mentioned is that he was doing an interview with someone, and they said, and it was for a position in the organization, and he was saying, why do you want to work for World Vision? And he said, well, because you have the Jesus that everybody likes. The one that goes out and feeds the hungry and gets medicine and clean water to people. And he was saying, yeah, that's true, but it's deeper than that. And for me, knowing that our church has kind of been transitioning into balancing our commitment to the Great Commandment and the Great Commission, it was really helpful to also hear a story he told us about churches in Lebanon. And I just offer this to us too because it was a very powerful story. Many of us probably don't know that at one point Syria had invaded Lebanon, and it was a very awful situation. And that now in how the Christian churches in Lebanon have responded to that. And he was sharing with us that he met with a Lebanon pastor who said, he's like, why are you helping them? How are you explaining this to people? And he was saying, well, it would be logical for me to hate these people. They've killed family members, but Jesus called us to not just like our enemy, but to love them. And how when he went to Lebanon to worship, there were many, many Muslims coming to church at these Christian Lebanese churches because they had been fed, they had been clothed, they had been housed. And that opened them to receiving the gospel in a way that just kindness, which was above and beyond what they even expected, which is really, really powerful. And I wonder, too, what does that look like for us here? We don't necessarily are at war with our neighbors, but I think that there are people here who we have been very good at serving, and I'm personally challenged by the next step of what does it look like for us to explain why? Why are we doing what we're doing? How can I engage more intentionally and authentically in conversations with people about the gospel of Jesus Christ? And so, again, thank you. I really had a fantastic experience. I left feeling really encouraged and inspired. I look forward to sharing with you guys more of the details about it. The theme of the conference was locally grown. What is your flourishing next step? And while we got a lot of the big picture things, as Eric said, there is a lot of commitment to what does it look like to be uniquely placed here in Grove City to be sharing the gospel in our context, in our culture here, and challenging us to do that really well with excellence, most of all, to glorify God and to love our neighbors. Thanks.
I will say thank you, Corey, thank you for being a part of that too. So when they got back, I got texts from two of them saying, get ready, we're going to put you to work. There's some things they saw that we really want to work out. And one reason why I wanted the two of them to share about the conference they went to, and by the way, I didn't go this year because I think somebody had to be home. It's the first one I've not gone to, but a lot of you have been here long enough to remember when we came into ECO and left our former tribe. And in thinking about that, reflecting about that, I knew that my days in that group were done after I got back from a similar national meeting. I didn't know what God had for East Maine, but I knew for myself it wasn't going to be much longer. And my wife reminded me, Amy, the other day, because I was telling her about some exciting things that Melissa, Corey, and Eric had been sharing with me. She said, remember when you got back from that General Assembly meeting you went to? She says, you didn't say anything about Jesus or ministry, or anything really that happened in that vein. It's really true. It wasn't about getting us, fired up for ministry and to tell people the gospel. But every time we go to one of these, that's what it's about. It's not about, we're better than them. We don't do it like that. It's positively about, how can we be living out the gospel in this day and age in ways that bless people and help people come to know Christ and grow as his followers. So I hope you caught just a sense of that from Eric and Melissa here too. That's what our wider tribe is about. It's about motivating us to be about real gospel-centered ministry. Again, thank you guys much for sharing that.
Bill, can I ask one question?
Yep.
Just on that? Just because I know when we made this decision to go to ECO, how many churches were represented? How many people were there? Would you say, do you know those numbers?
Yeah, boy, who was there? Van was with us, Mike was with, Jackson was with us. Dave, were you with us at that one as well? No, I don't think you were. There were a lot of people that came to this conference, but when we joined ECO, we were in the 30s of churches that joined. 6 churches joined that day, 32 to 38. We were in that group. Now there's about 360. So, and what's really to me exciting too is that at this point, we are getting, and you guys may know better about this than I, but one of the goals was to say that we want to come to the point where we're not getting churches that are transferring in, but we're planting churches. And that's starting to happen. That a lot of our newer churches are churches that are planted and that are starting to grow. So that's a really exciting thing to be part of. But yeah, about 360 now across the country. Yep. All right, well, looking ahead to this year that we are now in, what are we called to be about? Well, I could have put our mission statement up, but I decided instead to put Scripture up. Okay. To go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything that I've commanded. That's God's call for us in 2019. It's God's call to us every year that he gives us, really, until he returns. And I put it out like that because this is not because Paul Borden said we're supposed to do this, or some team of consultants did. Okay, it's Jesus that said this is what we're to be about, right? Making disciples, and then the participles. What does that mean? Well, baptizing them. That's more than just getting them wet. Okay, it includes that, but baptizing it's the initial foray into. It's initially becoming a disciple, initially becoming part of the church. Okay, so that would be the more part of our making more disciples for Jesus Christ, seeing new people come into the faith and come into the church. Okay, it's the baptizing part. And the teaching them to obey everything I commanded you, well, that's the ongoing part. That's what we're trying to live out now, right? And we live that one out until we die and go to heaven, right? That's the ongoing being of disciples. So that's really what we're called to be about this year. So how are we going to do it? What are the really important components to it? And especially, what are the key priorities for East Maine, at this point in 2019? To be doing that more fruitfully, more effectively. And certainly that's going to involve decisions about programs, right? A big one is going to be decisions about Sunday morning, or Sunday morning schedule. We keep having 2 services close together and Sunday schools at both times. Do we not do it that way. That's going to be key. It's going to be key decisions about just how we go about making decisions, our structure, and one of the things that's going to happen this year in that vein is that in September, we expect, we're going to have a meeting asking you to approve the change of our bylaws, and especially with respect to the makeup and the roles of session and how they relate to staff in terms of decision making, just to kind of make things we think can facilitate the mission of making disciples. Because really, changes in programs, or not even changes, but your programs, your structure, all of that, we think about that as being the things that are really important, and they are, but they're important because they facilitate our mission, making disciples. That's what's behind all that. And so we think it behooves us to first ask, well, what in the world is a disciple then? What's it even mean to be a disciple? What's that mean? What's a disciple look like? What's the product, if you will, that we're trying to produce here? The kind of person that we're trying to develop through whatever we do. And not just generically, but what's a disciple look like in this town, in this era, and a disciple coming up from this particular congregation with our particular history and tradition and all of that. What's that look like? And so last weekend, our Mission and Vision Elder team, which is a couple of them are here. Dave Taylor, Ron Soltis are here. Also, Jim Gamble was part of that. Bonnie Schaefer, Rose Phillips, and Jim Dixon would have been, but Jim Dixon's in Hawaii. So, but he's a part of that team too. But we got together last weekend and spent a lot of time together, and a good bit of our time was focused just on this, on saying, let's come up with a profile of a disciple. We didn't want to write a book about it, but we wanted to get something that was concrete and specific enough that we could sink our teeth into, because we said, look, until we know what the target is that we're shooting for, it's really hard to figure out what we're doing. And that's really the picture that we came up with. And it's a provisional picture. So on the back of the page, this. Take a look at that. Again, this is not something. It's something that's a work in progress. It's something that we hope that some of you will talk to us about and contribute to refining. Neither of us should look at this as a checklist, okay? Because all these kind of habits and these behaviors of disciples, things that at different seasons we're going to be more or less about for various reasons. And also because you can never really reduce what being a follower of Jesus is to a checklist of stuff to do, right? It's about the heart. It's about a real change, becoming a new creation, right? But if there's a real heart change, there ought to be some kind of effect that people can see, right? And so that's what this is a picture of. It's a picture of, this is what we think people should be able to see as we become disciples. Again, it's not that we're all going to live out this perfectly. We're not going to live out any of this perfectly. But again, we think this is kind of a picture to sink our teeth into. It's the kind of person that we're seeking to develop. Just any questions, comments, just on what you see there. I know you're seeing this mostly for the first time, and that's okay, but I hope that you'll take this with you and ruminate on that and get back to us about that and say, well, why are we emphasizing this, and how about this, and those kind of things. Yeah, we don't want to make something super long and voluminous, but what's something we can sink our teeth into.
Question on that.
Yep.
Now, when will the meetings for the children's programming be taking place?
Boy, I'm not sure of that, Jen. And Melissa just left. But certainly, meetings to evaluate would be sometime done in spring.
Is this something that Corey will be sending out on our email blast?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Because we're not necessarily in services.
Yeah. No, it's not
probably every single week.
No, we won't. Those decisions, we won't make them in a dark corner somewhere.
And another question: why does a lot of our voting take place on holiday weekends? For example, Thanksgiving is, why do we do that every year? Because I have lived here my whole entire life, and I'm always in Warren County for opening day of deer season.
Yeah.
It's just, I will never be on church that weekend, I hate to say, so we kind of feel that we never have a say. Plus, our Sunday school class in general, We canceled Sunday school that weekend because a lot of us have family out of town, and we are never present.
Yeah, a couple things, Jen. I think the big reason why it's, first of all, is what we're going to do. We're going to do at that point is to elect officers. That's what we're voting to do. We like to do that at a time we have one service, because it's the easiest time to have a congregational meeting. And we usually have one service, the Sundays around Thanksgiving. And I guess the other thing is that while it's a significant time voting for the elders, it's not a controversial thing. In fact, I've not seen like a close vote on who we're going to be electing. So we're not dealing with controversial things at that meeting, I guess I would say, or things that that we really want to make sure that people who would go away for holidays went away. So I guess that'd be for that. I don't know, does that answer that at all?
Yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah.
And I know we've talked about this before, but also just to make everybody else aware, we have the same programming going on during both services for both church and Sunday school. So therefore, my 4-year-old, she brings 2 of the same art projects home every single week. And this has been going on continually. So now we're placed in a position, do we just start going to church once so she isn't down there for 2 hours doing the same activity?
Well, again, the whole thing about, Jen, the evaluating of what Sunday morning will look like, that will happen in the springtime, evaluating that and playing of that. So, and again, it won't be done in a dark corner somewhere, but it'll be wide open for people to participate in that.
Right. And just in general, the length for small children, it's a bit long, I feel, to have to keep a small child. As you know, she's now 10-month-old. That extra half an hour is, I'm not out there socializing with people because I got to run and take care of the baby and do this and do that. I mean, it's good if you're new to the church to have that half an hour to socialize. I'm not totally against it. Maybe if it was only 15 minutes, because I do definitely agree that when we only have 10 minutes between Sunday school and church, that was a little bit pushing it to get to between those services. But having almost 25 minutes to a half an hour, that's a bit long, I feel.
And again, we're going to have plenty of time, Jen and others that have introduced that issue to talk that through, as how it is we're going to be doing Sunday morning. Because I know it's something that frankly for some families just is not working real well. For some it is, for some it's not. But it's something we've got to talk through, and especially to talk through how does this relate to what we're really trying to be about in terms of making disciples here. So, but again, thanks for that input, and again, we're not going to, we won't say, let's not let Jen Michael know. You'll know when we're talking about these things. But again, I hope that as you look at just that profile of just what we're looking at, we're trying to the kind of people we're trying to develop. That's kind of the target, and that's why we're choosing the priorities that we have here. And again, yeah.
Can I see
Yep.
your question? So for these, how do we incorporate them? Like, is this going to be like our on our mission page? This is under that, and so we start planning for Sunday school and youth groups and raising children in the church and families and adults in the church. Is this our motto, our goals, like a confirmation? Are they going to be focusing on these? Or is this kind of just a clarification and if anybody asks, sort of thing?
Yeah,
how do we incorporate this? Is this a big thing, a little thing?
Yeah, I hope it becomes a big thing that we get incorporating. That again, that we always have before us a picture of, just like, and you do, I know, like families like yours do with your kids. You know what you want your kids to become. And it behooves you, I think, at some point to kind of really think that through clearly. And then you start thinking through what are the steps to getting there. So I would say this is the starting point for that, Tracy. I've not thought through all those steps. One thing I will say is this will probably become the core of what we talk through with adults who are coming in. And we'll probably have some conversation about this with confirmation students this year as well. But what I hope you'll hear in a minute here is how some of this informs some of what we think this year we need to really make kind of missional priorities that we're focusing on. But no, you're right. If all this becomes some statement that you hear once in a meeting and just sits there and goes in a drawer forever, what's that mean? You know, wouldn't mean much.
No, I think that's a good point, because I'm reading through here thinking, do I even do this stuff? To be honest, I mean, that's part of it. I think, obviously, I really appreciate where we're going as a church outreaching, but I think I even look at this as myself as a sort of a job description.
Oh, sure.
I hate to put it in that terms, but
Yeah.
that's the business mind in me saying, am I following through with this too? Am I drawing closer to Christ here too?
Right, and I hope, Dick, not in sort of like a guilt-inducing. Oh, not doing this one. Not, that's what I said. Not as a checklist, but as a picture.
Yeah.
This is kind of what we're shooting for. Again, there may be times in your life when some of these things aren't going to work for you. You know, and some of us are sort of wound up to emphasize some of these more than others, and that's kind of understandable. But just as we read Scripture and we think about, okay, what is a disciple? These are some of the kind of the main and plain things that we talked about. Well, again, with this in mind is sort of the target that we're shooting for. The next question that this group we asked, we said, well, what are 3 or 4 things that we know we really need to emphasize to be about if we're going to be helping to produce people that are like this? Now, you could name a dozen things, right? There could be a whole lot of things. We said, what are kind of the big rocks that we got to get in our bucket first, where the others aren't going to happen? And my hope for today was to be able to express those 3 or 4 things in terms of a statement for each with a very specific, measurable goal. I'm not going to be able to do that today because, frankly, we weren't there yet as far as discussion went. If I were to try to do that, it'd be kind of throwing darts at the wall. It wouldn't really be a genuine thing. But I want to share with you at least the areas where we're going to be setting those kind of goals so that you can at least see what these priorities are that are going to be driving what we do. One of them is this, that we want to see more new disciples, meaning more professions of faith. And to give you an idea about how we think about that, let me share with you how we saw that happening last year, okay? We saw it happening in a bunch of different ways. And some of those, for example, the 2 kids in the baptism, the bishop girls being baptized. Now, when did they really cross the line, from unfaith to faith? Probably was sometime before 2018. But 2018, they went public with it. They came and talked to me and said, I want to be baptized. I said, well, why? And we had that conversation. And then they gave a testimony before they were baptized. Ditto with the confirmation students. I'm not sure about each of them, but I know at least 2 of them would probably have told you that when it really happened for them, that they became followers of Christ, it was sometime before that. But confirmation was a key moment because it's when they stood up and publicly said so. A couple people, when they became covenant partners, as you look back, we said that was really kind of coming back to faith from a long time being away. And then, a couple older teens on the mission trip, and 3 in response to a call to commitment during worship. Now, if we're Baptists, probably only a couple of those count, right? You probably count the people on the mission trip, and you count the 3 making the call to commitment. They're the only ones that really count. But part of what we think is important, we want to recognize when children do something significant, like tell somebody outside their family about their faith in a public way. We think that's a big thing. We think it's a big thing when confirmation students who may have grown up in the faith really are confirming something that's been true for a while. And so we want to mark those moments too. And by the way, something in this vein with kids I'm especially excited about going forward. And that is that something we're now asking, not demanding, but we're asking families when their children are feeling ready to take communion, we're asking if they'd have that child come and talk to one of our elders. Or me, or one of our pastors. Okay? Well, I'm an elder too, teaching elder. But to come talk to one of our elders and say, what did you believe about Jesus Christ? Why do you want to take communion? And again, one of the things I'm excited about that is because What that does is they're going to have that conversation. Well, that's really being more intentional about making sure they have the conversation in the home, with their parents, with their families first, too. There's going to be a whole lot more talking about what does it mean to profess faith. And so, again, I think that's important, too. I think it's important to celebrate when kids do things like that. I think all of these are important. So when we do go about establishing concrete goals here, we're going to do it in terms of a couple of different categories. One is going to be children who are making some kind of profession of faith outside their family to someone. Another's going to be confirmation. Another's going to be adults. I do think it's important, though, to preserve that Baptist category, if you will. Okay? Because that's really a more effective measure of how we're doing at making a dent in our secular community. Right? And so that one's an important one, too. Any questions about that, Tammy?
So I know that you're not ready to put the metrics down for 2019, but
Right.
we did have metrics at this meeting starting for 2018. So my question is, did we meet the goals?
Well, we didn't really set it. Well,
We did. We had numbers and percentages.
yeah, we had our goal. Our goal, we had a 5-year goal, is what we had. And our 5-year goal was to see 120 professions of faith. That'd be an average of 24, so 12. So it's not quite there. And by the way, I would say, frankly, Tammy, that even some of these wouldn't count toward your 24. Because again, it's not making the dent in the community. Here's the importance, though, I think, of establishing a numerical goal, and we will do this even for 2019, is that it's not whether or not you even hit the number, but having a number drives your process to do what you're supposed to do to get there. For example, if we say we want to see 20 adults profess faith in Christ, that's our goal. And so what happens then is we begin to try to do things to try to reach that. We begin to do things in worship. We begin to have special appeals. We begin to maybe try to train people to share their faith with others in more intentional ways. Okay? And so at the end of the year, we say, oh, it's only 8 or 10. Well, on one hand, you step back and you say, well, how come it wasn't 20? What can we do to do this better? Which is a good thing. But I think you also have to recognize that, well, you know what? We got to 10 because we started engaging in things that we weren't doing before. And so that's part of the rationale for setting that. So no, if our 5-year goal was 120 people, we didn't hit that. But again, we're starting to at least measure it now. And so, yeah. But anyway, that's one of the things that we want to especially be looking at. Another one is this: Sunday morning attendance participation. Here's been the trend. And Ron Dickey can tell you even more specifically about the trend. I can tell you, again, these 3 years it's been going downward. Actually, it's been going downward each year since 2011. A lot of different theories about why that's true, and certainly we're not unique in that. The vast majority of churches in our region are in serious decline. But again, it's something that we want to see reversed. Also, one of the things we're thinking about, I don't quite know how to do this, but I talk about participation in worship, not just average Sunday attendance. It might be an even more effective expression of your discipleship to know not just how many come, but how frequently do people attend. One of the trends nationally, and it's probably true at East Maine as well, is that among Christians, they go to worship services less than they used to. The most recent Barna survey on this, the George Barna Group, surveyed on this, of people who self-identified, who said that they are frequent or regular church attenders. When you break down the numbers, they attend 1.8 Sundays per month, okay? Which is down significantly from what it would have been, I think it was 15 years before when they had a number for that. I don't remember what the number was. So that's also significant, especially in terms of discipleship, in terms of the impact that you're just having with people. Again, I don't quite know how to measure that. That's a trickier one for us to do. But that's something that also we might want to be considering and thinking about.
Bill?
Yeah.
To go along with that, or to think about, a lot of that has to do with teachers staying in Sunday school and not going to church, especially first service. High school students only have the option for Sunday school during first service, so you're pulling them out of, if they actually were supposed to be in worship or had been traditionally in worship, they're not there. So teachers are on and off. Per week or per month. Families, kids are choosing to go to Sunday school and not to church anymore, so
Right.
those numbers are, I don't want to say wonky, but wonky in that
Yep.
they're not really who are being serviced in a worship service and who are not because of Sunday school and how that has played a role in those numbers fluctuating. It's not necessarily we're not bringing people in or we've lost 29 people in traditional
Right.
service. It's that those people might be entrenched down in the basement. Sorry.
Right.
We're playing the battle.
Shackled. Shackled.
No, shackled. Entrenched is in a good way of fighting the spiritual battle with these kiddos. But those numbers might not be a clear indication of who has the heart to be there,
Absolutely.
but just
Yep.
aren't there because of different things.
Right, and what some suggested too is that especially if we're continuing with this schedule, that a better measure would not be your worship attendance, but your overall Sunday morning attendance would be a better measure of how you're touching people. But to your point, Tracy, a question that I asked Jacqueline, and again, this has only been since the fall, by the way, because only the fall has been an issue. But and she estimates that as many as up to about 24 people, right? What you're saying would be the case. People who are children, youth, and teachers who are not in a worship service because they're serving in Sunday school or being in Sunday school with students. So it could be up to as many as 2,000.
Well, just a thing of encouragement. This morning there were 509 people in church, which is the first time we've been over 500 since Easter last year. It was a good attendance for whatever reason. It was just.
Sun came out. Got warm. I feel like cabin fever.
Ron, how many were those college?
There were almost 100 college students at the second service. You know, the week that we had worship when the other churches all shut down, we got about 25 first-time college students. And I kind of can recognize them. And a lot of them kept coming back. So they must have liked us because they tried us and liked us. It gave us a little boost.
Yeah. So don't cancel church if it's
We are the church that never cancels.
When you say 500, do you mean both services?
Yeah, there was 224 at the first and 285 at the second.
That's the touring choir.
Was that counting the touring choir in both? Were they both services?
Not everyone.
I didn't know that would have been the touring choir at the first.
In any event, we don't have a specific number for you yet, but the idea is the goal is going to be to kind of try to reverse this trend. We know it's a challenge to do, but it's a challenge, especially it's a challenge given what we see, just the trends around our. But I keep harkening back to 3/4 of the people in this community are functionally unchurched. There is a mission field there. Okay, so the idea is not that we're gonna get a few more Methodists to come here instead of there. That's not the idea at all. It's of the 3/4 of people here who are functionally unchurched.
And that we would make a concerted effort, if I remember this correctly, to teach the congregation some ways to do that. Are we doing that? How are we doing that? And how can we do it better? Because I don't even know that we're doing it.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we are seeking to do, and that we've done since then, is we've gotten a lot more serious about, and the word, we're trying to find a better word for this, but assimilation, which means helping people come from, first step into church, a toe in the water, to becoming invested. That's the reason why we have the Connect team and that sort of thing going on. It's one of the reasons why Eric is here, to help with that whole effort. So yeah, we are I think in kind of shaky steps, instituting an assimilation system where we kind of have a process where we know, okay, somebody comes in for the first time. How do we help a first-time visitor become a second-time visitor? How do we help a second-timer become a regular? How do we help a regular really plug in and be a follower of Jesus with us? That's the goal. And although one of the things you'll see, and I'll say, that's not one of the 3 or 4 things that we said this time. It's one that we debated, but it's a big part of Eric's ministry, and Eric has some specific goals in those areas. I welcome you to talk to him sometime after this, because he has some very specific, concrete goals about that stuff that he's working toward. Okay, so worship is one there, and I don't know what my clicker is. Where's my clicker? Adult participation in small groups and classes. Okay? This one because we really believe that in terms of both growing as disciples and also caring for disciples who are here, growth and care, that being involved in groups like a Sunday school class, like a Bible study, like Financial Peace University, like the choir, like being part of churches like the building, that being a part of groups like this is something that really is something like a hothouse for growth in terms of discipleship, and also it's a way that you get cared for by other people. So that's something that is one of the big ones. And so we want some goals in terms of establishing new groups, percentage of people who are East Mainers being in a group, things like that. And so that's going to mean some research and development that we have to do to figure out, okay, what groups are we missing? What are some things that we're not doing that might catch some people to be part of? How can existing groups, how can we help them to be aware of who might want to be a part of them? So it involves a lot of that. And again, Eric's going to have some significant leadership among us in that vein too. And he has some specific goals of his own for that. But that's going to be a big priority for us too. And then the last one, because again, we could have a whole lot of them, but we said we've got to limit this to 3 or 4, is in finances, financial giving. And really for 2 reasons. One, because, finances help to fund the mission, what we're about. But also because giving is some indication of discipleship, right? And so probably when we get more specific about this and put a numeric goal to this, it's probably not going to be so much in terms of we'd like our budget to be X, but in terms of giving units, taking steps. If we have so many people giving at this level, what would it take to get more to give at this level? And so on. It'll probably be more in that vein. And again, the reason for that is in terms of discipleship. Just as you probably say if somebody's coming to church more, or they're praying more, that they're getting more serious about Jesus, same thing with giving. That's not always going to be true. You might be a very generous giver, but you get laid off in 2019. You might not be a generous giver, you might win the lottery in 2019, and a whole lot of things like that. But generally speaking, giving is an indication of where our hearts are with God. And so that's going to be another one of the things that we're going to pick down as goals. So in summary, they're the 4 biggies that the Mission Vision team is looking at. Now, among other things that we know are important and that we considered and that some of us do have specific goals in, one was assimilation. That's an area where we might want to set some goals. And again, Eric has set some goals there. Development of leaders. It's another area we thought about setting some goals. Getting prayer, getting a system in place that involves more people, more significantly in prayer among us. And then also somehow finding a way and setting goals to measure service. And to measure people putting in time that they're giving in service to the Lord, in the church and the community, and that sort of thing. But again, we stepped back, we said, look, we try to, and we're going to do a lot of things in those areas too, but we said, look, if we really identify and try to focus on everything, we'll probably end up not doing much of anything. And so, again, these are the areas that we, myself and the Mission Vision team, got together and said that these are kind of the big rocks we think that we really need to address in terms of fulfillment of the mission. And hopefully seeing these is where we're going to be focusing will help you understand why we do some of what we do in the year ahead, why we emphasize some things and don't emphasize others. But again, not that we're not going to do other stuff. Not that other stuff isn't important. But again, these are the things that at this juncture of our history here at East Maine, we just felt we really, really need to focus on very intentionally. And while we will establish some numeric goals that we will share with you, as I said in response to Tammy there, the point is not always just that you hit the number for the goal. The point is that when you have these goals, it drives your process, it drives you to do the kinds of things that you need to do in order to make some things happen in those areas. Anyway, that's a snapshot of what we're hoping to be driving toward in the year ahead. And I welcome any questions, comments, critiques. It's not everything, but at some point you've got to identify a few things that you really think are important to be working on. So, and that's for the year what's going to get a lot of energy. Obviously, there's nothing like, for example, you don't see the word children there anywhere. That's huge in our church. You don't see the word mission in there. That's huge in our church. We're going to be doing plenty of things there. These are things as a mission vision team we said we really need to emphasize in the year ahead. Dave?
Pastor Bill, is our eco-denomination doing anything in terms of gathering information from the local churches that are doing some of these things, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel?
Say it, flesh that out a little bit. I'm not quite sure I understand what you're asking.
I'm curious to know whether the eco-denomination is endeavoring to gather information from the local congregations that are also dealing with these issues, so that we don't have to start with a blank sheet of paper and reinvent the wheel.
Yeah. Again, with all these, one of the things that we do need to be doing is looking at who are people who do these things well, and learn from them. Similar to what we did with the assimilation. We sent two teams of people to go to a church that does that very well. So yeah, with each of these, yeah, we'd love to talk to our ECO folks. ECO is encouraging all churches to do something like this. To Melissa even witnessed to a little bit when she said, what's your next flourishing step? That's some of what ECO is really encouraging churches to do, is say, to fulfill your mission, what are the big things that you have to accomplish? And so, yeah, I think it'll be important for us, Dave, to check in and say, hey, Dana Allen, who is still our coach through the revitalization process, who's somebody that does really well with adult groups and classes? Who's somebody we can talk to? So yeah, they're a resource for us. Ben?
I like this. I'm excited to see it happening. I too would still like some help in sharing my faith. As everybody gets reminded of something that would help.
Yeah. To be honest with you, Ben, I appreciate you saying that. I don't necessarily like all this, because it's not all what I feel good at. It's not all what I feel our church is good at. I do think it's what's necessary to move us forward. It's challenging. I cringe a little bit to know that, throwing that out there, and when we throw out specifics, that I'll be held accountable as a leader of this bunch for how well we did these things. And again, some of them I'm looking at and saying, man, I don't do that very well. I'm going to have to learn some things. But I think that's key for all of us. We've all got to learn some things. Because again, there's some, we need to see some of the 75% of people in this community who aren't connected to church and presumably aren't really connected to the Lord become connected. And why are we here? We're here to be a part of helping that to happen. We're not just here for ourselves to kind of, make sure that we're all okay till we get to heaven, right? I mean, we're here to get mobilized to reach this whole community. And so, yeah, so it's exciting, but it's scary, because it involves some things we don't necessarily do well. Yeah, Tracy.
Can you flesh out a little bit what you mean by unchurched in our community? I'm not disputing that at all, but kind of relating that you threw out the 1.8 times worshiping for most Christians in America. That to me is
well, that's Christians who say they're frequent or regular attenders.
Right. Yeah. So what do we look like half the time if what it was unchurched?
You want to say how do we get to that number?
Can we define what unchurched means?
Yeah.
Because going to church once a month to me means that we have a lot of work to do, especially with the numbers on the back or our goals on the back, as far as participating in small groups and everything. So if we have somebody even who comes once a month, we're not meeting their needs according to our goals.
That's right. Now, the once a month would not count as an unchurched person.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
so
here's how we
that
did
is
it.
a church person.
Here's how we did this. We and again, it wasn't a complete scientific study. We looked at their 28 churches in the Grove City School District.
And
now,
almost every corner.
Right. Now, granted, there are people who go to those churches who don't live in the school district. There are people in the school district who go to churches outside the district. We just kind of said, we don't really know how to measure that. We'll just assume that's a wash. May or may not be true. Okay? But what we asked is this. We said, We didn't ask for your average attendance. We didn't ask for your membership. We said, if everybody who you consider a part of your church, and then we said, here's what we said to consider part of our church. You got to show up 4 times a year or something. That's pretty low standard, right? Because usually, by the way, if people show up 4 times, they show up more than that, too, right? But we said, yeah, that's how we did it for us, and we shared that with them. So we said, we consider, if we see somebody 4 times a year, they're part of our church. If everybody who's part of your church showed up on the same Sunday, how many people would be there? For us, the number was 700 and something. Okay? And we asked that of all those churches.
Does that include shut-ins and?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we said able-bodied, right? We didn't count. Yeah, shut-ins. We said if you're a shut-in member, we count you as you're here. You're part of us. You just can't get here. So, and again, how every church did that. Some churches probably counted differently. We can't. This was not a scientific study, okay? But that's the question that we asked. And again, with the number we got back of a little over 16,000 people that live in our school district, it was about 4,000 who would be part of the church in that way. So again, and frankly, if there's somebody who says, and I find this a lot, if people, someone will call me up and say, oh, so-and-so from your church in the hospital, who are they? What? I've been here 11 years. I've never seen them. But I hope that person who thinks they're part of East Main Church, I hope that somebody from the Methodist Church can reach them and they become a Christian. I think it's great. I'm not going to go sad. And likewise, so yeah, there'll be people like that. Most people around here, this is a little bit like the South. In the South, you never ask if somebody's a Christian, because they're all Christians, right? And so here you ask, you part of the church, oh yeah, I'm part of, whatever church, because they were baptized there.
I grew up there or whatever.
Yeah. We're not saying that. We're saying, again, for us, if we see you 4 times a year, we consider you part of us. So that was the question. That's how we come up with that number.
Well, that matches some other statistics. I think you mentioned the coroner had a meeting recently in Mercer County because of the opioid.
Yeah, it was a little different. His question was on a typical Sunday, how many are in church? 18% is the high-end number. It's probably really low than that.
The 25% is about the number. 25% that are associated with some church is okay. I think that matches other statistics I've heard.
Yeah. I mean, we can quibble with it a bit if you want, and it might be higher, it might be lower. But the whole point is, there are a whole lot of people out there who aren't really connected to a church or to the Lord. And again, when I say out there, and you can personalize this. You can think of, people who live in your street, right? People are families.
And that mostly means that kids in Grove City Public Schools, 75% have no knowledge, no working knowledge of God. Other than it's probably not true. That's probably what they think. It's a religion. It's probably not true.
Yeah. Let me hear you once. This will shock you. A friend of mine is a pastor in the Laurel School District. Laurel is a country school. One of the teachers, I think from their church, is a social studies teacher, just took an informal survey of juniors in high school and asked, do you believe that God is real? That was one question. Do you believe that God is real? What percentage said yes? High school juniors, Laurel, country school. Ted?
Could we touch on communications for a moment?
Yep. Can I just get this one question out? I just want to see if people...
50%.
No.
30.
This is Laurel. This is Laurel by Newcastle.
Yeah, you know what? I'm now forgetting that. I told you, Bob. What did I say Bible study? Was it 25? 25. Yeah, 25%. 25% of juniors at Laurel High School believe God is real? Nice. We got work to do, friends. We got real work to do. Yeah.
A lot of people may know this, but it used to be that on national surveys, when they asked people if they had a church affiliation, there were 3 or 4% of Americans that said they had no affiliation. Well, not atheists, they just had no interest in organized religion at all. It's now 22% in America, and it's mostly younger people. Now again, very few of those are atheists, but they just have no interest whatsoever. So the people who are just drifting away from any connection to religion, to church, to synagogues, to anything, has, I don't know, it's gone from 3 or 4% to over 20% just in the last generation or so. So our work's cut out for us.
Okay. I want to take just one more. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm not being faithful to my promise a quarter after. But Ted, I do want to just listen to your question, and then somebody can close us in prayer. And I'll be willing to talk to anybody who wants to for as long as you want to. But Ted, you were talking communication?
Communications. We lack the communications. I've seen an improvement, but I think we could still improve.
Okay, so pat ourselves a little in the back and kick ourselves in the butt, right?
We depend on the computer, and there are many people don't go that route.
Yep.
I think we could do better.
Yeah, good word. The communication is something, Dick said 36 years ago, we were talking about that. And we've heard some things that it's improving, but then you didn't witness that. But yeah, we can always get better at that. Yep. I do thank you, though, for coming, because part of how you communicate is you show up when people are communicating. And so thank you for doing that. Particularly thank you for coming, those of you who have real questions and concerns and issues, because it's a good place to be able to talk about them. And as I say, I'm willing to linger as long as people want to talk about some specific things. I started us in prayer. Can somebody else finish us in prayer?
Oh, I love benedictions.
Uh-oh, he's a preacher. This might be a long prayer.
Let's pray. Lord Jesus Christ, we want to be a people who are committed to the Great Commission and who are committed to the Great Commandment. Will you cause your kingdom to grow in our midst in the coming year? We pray for the leaders you have placed over us, that you will encourage them in the labor of their hands, let them see fruit of their labor, and give us eyes to see the white harvest before us, even here in our own backyards. Dismiss us to your care, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.